Being a hero means walking around with a target on your back, and despite the immense plot armor heroes carry, sometimes even they become susceptible to being taken out. Welcome back, Nerd Squad, it's me, Amanda. Today we'll be counting down another top 10 brutal superhero defeats on this part 2. Let me know about some of the most brutal moments that you've ever witnessed down below in the comments. Number 10. All of this is prologue. Maybe one of the most powerful losses that I felt in recent history while reading comics came from the event AXE, Judgment Day. Not only is there the initial illusionary loss that our heroes feel, where I actually for a moment thought that they had all been killed by going for the Celestials off switch, only to find out that this was basically a ruse created by the progenitor, but when they actually all physically united to go up against the progenitor in real life and it wasn't an illusion, they failed as well. This all went down in AXE Judgment Day issue number 5, where many were killed as a result of the plan to attack the Celestial altogether and directly head on. Only a few eggs from Krakoa were able to be saved, and so bringing back some of the many who had fallen was a tough choice. For those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about resurrection protocols which are happening on Krakoa, which is the mutant island right now. It left me wondering as well where this story could possibly go next. And I mean, this story was like a roller coaster. It was actually, I really liked Judgment Day. It was a whirlwind. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, and if you love when we talk about brutal moments, be sure to check out our brutal playlist for even more brutality. Number 9. Delicious. Maybe one of the most gruesome fights to have ever happened involving Spider-Man happens against one of my personal favorite villains, Morlun. And yes, I know, there are many people out there that don't like Morlun, but I do like Morlun. What can I say? I am a sucker for vampires, even if they are weird, multiversal, energy vampires that feed on animalistic totemic energy. During the other story, Spider-Man was suffering from a mysterious illness and was weakened. It was during this time that Morlun struck in issue 526 of The Amazing Spider-Man. Not only does he beat Spider-Man to a pulp here, but he also devours one of his eyeballs, plucking it out. Yeah, ouch. And also, if I may add, ew. I also love that for this point I literally took the quote delicious. Number 8. Be true to yourself. Be the best you are able to. Don't ever give anything but your best. This defeat wasn't a straight up defeat per se, but really a lot of that column A with just a hint of column B. During the Crisis on Infinite Earths event in issue number 7 of the event's miniseries, Kara attempts to rescue her cousin Superman from the clutches of the Anti-Monitor. As the Anti-Monitor stands poised to kill him, Kara comes out swinging. Here, Supergirl proved just how fierce she can be and how determined when it came to protecting others. Ultimately, she was defeated and even killed in this fearsome fight, but at least she did succeed in destroying Anti-Monitor's machines here, and with the help of Dr. Light, saving Cal. Supergirl sacrificed her life to save her cousin, but her death also served to remind him of his own mortality. Number 7. You'll only be remembered as a madman. Professor X really cannot catch a break. In almost every universe he is in, he dies at some point, and usually pretty terribly. And in the case of the Ultimate Universe, he died by having his neck snapped by Magneto during Ultimatum. But hey, at least he got an on-panel death. Very few were quite so lucky during Ultimatum. Though it does feel weird to call being defeated lucky, but here we are. Xavier's famous last words to Magneto are warning him that he has gone too far, and that regardless of what he thinks he can do, wipe out the entire world as though he were a god, wash the human race from its surface, that he will not win, and in fact will go down in history as another madman. Just another madman. When Xavier compares him to the leader of Germany during World War II, however, the Chancellor of the German Reich, you know who I'm talking about, that causes Magneto to snap, which makes sense given Magneto's history. He snapped Xavier's neck in response, so while Magneto would not ultimately win the greater war here, he would win this battle at least, pretty permanently, because you know, Xavier's dead. Number 6. What a lucky man I was. I think the wild thing here is how little is said or thought in this fight. Well, I mean, there are no thought bubbles. I'm sure people are thinking, but we don't get to know what they are because, you know, this defeat comes from the battle between Superman and Doomsday, but in the animated film, The Death of Superman. So yeah, no thought bubbles here. The fight here between Superman and Doomsday somehow comes across as even more brutal and devastating to me than in the comics. Superman is choked by his own cape at one point, which Doomsday rips in the process, And when Superman is ready to give up, it is Doomsday's direct threat to Lois Lane, who tosses a rock at the Brute in the midst of the fight, brave Lois Lane, that inspires Superman to get up one last time. Lois shares that she got Clark's note, and she confesses that she shares his feelings and actually loves him back. Not willing to see the woman he loves die, Superman takes one final swing at Doomsday and manages to break his neck, twisting his head all the way around, killing him. However, this final punch also seals Superman's fate, using his last bit of strength before he too perishes. In the comments on part 1, someone actually talked about how Superman's death here, while fighting and defeating Doomsday in any of the versions of this story, could be seen as a victory, because he did accomplish what he set out to do. And while I agree with that sentiment, because yeah, Superman does defeat Doomsday, Doomsday also robs Metropolis and the world of one of its most powerful heroes during this fight. And so in that way, Superman is kind of also defeated. I mean, he loses his life, so it's kind of like a two-way defeat when you think about it. It's bittersweet, which to me sums up what a brutal defeat is. It's something that is often hard to watch and something that comes with usually a pretty high cost. Number 5. Yeah, I always get up. Man, when it comes to tragic Spider-Man deaths, for a guy that seems to always survive just about anything, we sure have a lot of those. And Into the Spider-Verse, there are multiple Spider-Men and women, Spider-Folks as I like to say, and the reality of Miles Morales, he is Spider-Man, but even in his reality, there was a Peter Parker who was the original Spider-Man. Tragically, almost as soon as Miles gets to know him and he sees that Miles also has spider-like abilities, he's gone, leaving Miles without a mentor until he meets the alternate reality Peter B. Parker. Peter dies while trying to stop Kingpin's plot to open up portals to other dimensions, in the hopes of reviving the family that he lost. After passing on a USB key, or a goober, as it is called by Peter B, to Miles to use it to stop the collider, Kingpin and Prowler confront Spider-Man, and when Peter warns Kingpin that his plan will both destroy the world and ultimately fail in the process, or I mean at least destroy New York here, Kingpin loses his cool, slamming his fists into an already exhausted Spider-Man's chest, killing him. Number 4. This is going to hurt you a lot more than it does me. Famous words that come from Joker before he brutally attacks Jason Todd with a crowbar. This all went down in the Batman story A Death in the Family. Fans at the time were able to vote on whether or not Jason Todd would live or die. After the brutal attack on his life in issue 427 that ends with an explosion going off which buries Jason's body in rubble, in issue number 428 we'd get our answer to that fateful question. And ultimately it would be established that Jason had, in fact, died. Although much later on we learned this wasn't quite true when he seemingly returned from the dead years later as the antagonistic anti-hero Red Hood. Number 3. You losing your cool, Brucey? This is probably one of the most brutal in terms of the devastation that was physically wrought here. For this point we're talking about Wolverine versus Hulk, but in the Ultimate Universe. And you know it's going to be brutal because it's the Ultimate Universe. Wolverine was tasked with hunting down Hulk for Fury, but when he finally does find Hulk, Hulk remarks on how he really doesn't want to be found, also proving that, you know, he doesn't really need to be disturbed because he's actually calm, he's intelligent now, and at that time of no danger really to anyone. At least not in that moment. So long as they don't, of course, goad him into getting angry, of course, which, you guessed it, Wolverine purposefully does here. In response, Hulk and Wolverine begin to fight, and eventually Hulk rips Wolverine in half. And once Wolverine manages to climb a mountain to recover his legs, his lower half of his body, Hulk then threatens to eat one of Logan's legs. Ultimate Universe, why you like this? Fortunately, this pretty brutal defeat of Wolverine is interrupted by She-Hulk, who in this universe is actually Betty Ross. Number 2. What's 17 more years? While "Think, Mark" became one of the most famous and memeable lines from this superhero defeat and animated series, I would say in general, one of the most brutal moments in this fight happens when Omni-Man suggests that he could basically just destroy Mark, literally kill him with his own hands, and you know, just make another child if he has to. Asking rhetorically, what's 17 more years? For him as a Viltrumite, his lifespan is of course much longer than a human, so to him 17 years is basically nothing, a very short span of time. However, reducing his emotional connection that has been built up with his son over 17 years to something so seemingly meaningless, as though none of it really meant anything, makes the beating that Mark takes here just even more brutal. Granted, in the greater scheme of things, we know it isn't this simple for Omni-Man, who, it is revealed, does love his son and is unable to actually swing the killing blow, probably because of that. So, number 1. It was a nice piece of work, Kingpin. You shouldn't have signed it. It doesn't get more awful than this defeat right here. This one happened as a greater part of the famous Daredevil story Born Again. In issue number 227 of Daredevil, we are told the story titled appropriately Apocalypse. And indeed, if you are Matt Murdock, it would certainly feel like the apocalypse. Here, Kingpin finds out Daredevil's secret identity and uses it not to simply kill him, but instead to destroy his entire life. First, he comes for his law practice, making it seem as though Matt bribed a witness in a case. But he doesn't stop there. He comes after his finances, his sanity, and even blows up his apartment, and in the process, destroys his costume. However, while DD is left feeling pretty defeated by that point of the whole thing when his apartment goes boom at the end of this issue, he at least now has a name to pin this all on, seeing it all as the work of none other than Kingpin. So that's a plus, I would say. At least he has like a vendetta now to keep him going. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for watching and for being part of the Nerd Squad. We appreciate you all. Until next time, you stay nerdy, YouTube.